Hello, Facebook Live. It's Lindsay Price here, resident playwright for Theater Folk. Thank you for having my face in your feed. And you know what to do if you're like, that's too much face. That's too much face. Just scroll down. Just scroll down and go away. It's all good. I'm just going to sit here and talk. So I'm not going to be offended. I'll never know. It's okay. So first question I have for you. What musical is stuck in your head right now? If you're watching, please let me know below. What musical is stuck in your head right now? I have to adjudicate Joseph in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat in 2 weeks. So I have been listening to that all week, and literally all I'm doing all day long is singing songs from Joseph, for good or for ill. So what's in your head? What is the musical that is in your head right now? To the point where it's like, what else can I think of? What else can I do? Well, Hamilton, of course. Hamilton. That is a show that I was in New York for the huge snowstorm in January 2016, this January. And we were crossing our fingers because it was such a big snowstorm. It's like, there's going to be tickets for Hamilton because everyone's canceling. No one's going to come. We're going to be able to. And then they closed Broadway. And it's like, what was they closed the trains. And once they stopped the trains, then that's it. Hey, and Blair, you're already in my official question. The musical thing was my unofficial question because unfortunately that's what's in my head right now is go Joseph. But the real question, the serious question between you and me, the conversation that we are going to have is all about Shakespeare. Catherine, I did not know that today was Love Theater Day. Oh my gosh, that rocks. I'm so happy that today is the day that I'm doing a Facebook Live. I love that. Hashtag Love Theater Day. Well, isn't every day Love Theater Day? That's why we do this, right? That's why we're here, because we love theater. And for those of you who are theater educators, you love sharing theater with your kids and making sure that they love theater. And I think that's the best. That's what we got to do right now. We got to love theater, share the amazing skills that come from being in theater and reading theater and participating in the theater act on stage and off. I heard the best theater on stage, off stage quote, and I can't even remember it, but it was all about how off stage is life. All the skills that you learn off stage have a lot to do with life skills in terms of communication and working with and people and problem solving. People who work off stage have to do so much with problem solving in terms of what are the lights going to look like and how they connect with the sound and the costumes and the set design. And that's as much as I've got. If you're a DTA member, it's coming up soon in a Drama Teacher Academy in a course. That's the other thing I was doing today. I was listening to Joseph, and I was reading future Drama Teacher Academy proposals and scripts for professional development courses, just for you. All right, got to get back to Shakespeare, which is that's the question I have. And the link that is in the description is a link to one of our Shakespeare in an Hour pieces. Blair, I really like that your notion of hip hop and Shakespeare, which is the language of hip hop and the language of Shakespeare. That must be a really interesting key in for today's students. Teaching the language first. I think that is an interesting thing. Language is the biggest barrier. I'm going to come at it from the other direction and say that when I have been in that situation, I have taught story and character first. And that getting students really involved in who the characters are and what the stories are, and then segueing into language. But you know your students, and you know your the way that you teach more than I do. So I think that that's great that you have a very specific that's your doorway, right? Shakespeare's all about a doorway. I go from the story and the character, well, because that's what I write. I'm a character kind of playwright, so that's where my doorway in. I always say, you know, Romeo and Juliet is a story about a boy and a girl who fell in love when they weren't supposed to. What is a more connecting thing to today's teenager? And Hamlet is a guy who's lost, who all he wants is his dad to be proud of him. Now his dad is dead, and his dad is asking him to, you know, kill somebody. However, when you get right down to the heart of it, Hamlet is a guy who is feeling really lost and wants his dad to be proud of him. Again, connections. Okay, so I want to share about, not about, I wanted to share. I want to show you an example of our Shakespeare in an hour, because what we do is another really important way we think is making Shakespeare accessible is making it performable. Shakespeare was never meant to be sat and read in a English classroom. Sorry, English teachers, where everybody is sitting and reading. Well, they didn't even have scripts, right? In Shakespeare's time, they just were there and on feet, making it happen. If I'm not mistaken, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm wrong every day. It's fine. I'm all right with it. But the whole notion of getting a role, so when we think of actors' roles, comes from Shakespeare's time, because actors didn't get scripts. They got a role, like a role, with all their lines on it, and their cue lines and nothing else. They didn't get full scripts. And some of that had to do, I'm sure, with the massive undertaking that it would have been to put, you know what Shakespeare scripts look like. You know what that would have been to put it on everybody's a copy for everybody, because there was no photocopying. All would have been done by hand. But also there was a lot of thievery among playwrights. Shakespeare was not immune to that in terms of people just taking each other's material, as it were, and presenting it as their own, which for the most part we don't have today. So roles, let me show you. So what we have in our Shakespeare in an hour is that we want to make it performable. We want students to perform Shakespeare. We want them to get on their feet and explore these characters and explore these plays. So how do we do that? The first thing we do is we present cuttings of original text. Original text is very important language. It's very important that these Shakespeare in an hours are all original text. But when you look at a Shakespeare play, it is generous for cutting. What happens a lot, and I imagine this has to do with Shakespeare's audience, who was loud and pretty loud. You have the groundlings who were standing in the pit, and there were orange sellers, and there were people reacting to what was happening on stage and talking to each other. I always like to describe a typical Shakespeare audience that was probably more like a WWE experience than the way that we experience theater today, where everybody is quiet and sits in their chairs and shushes anybody who opens that candy really loudly. So a lot of times you will find that, and Midsummer Night's Dream is a perfect example of this, where you have that moment where Titania and Bottom meet and fall in love, and we see that in action. We see that happen. The very next thing is a massive monologue by Puck, where he describes to Oberon exactly what we've just seen. We've seen it. We don't need to have it outlined. And it's, fine. It's a great, my mistress with a monster is in love. My mistress is in love with an ass. Whatever that is. Lots of fun for Puck. However, from an audience experience point of view, we want to see the action. We don't want to be told the action. in our 20th century world. We are visual learners, everybody, and that's what we want. So there are opportunities and there is potential to make 4-hour plays less, because one of those simple reasons that a lot of times Shakespeare is showing us things and then telling us things in long monologues. We don't need long monologues. So that's one. We want to make it a manageable text in original language. 2, the other thing we do is we annotate. So that means that there is vocabulary help, right? So that we have the text on the left side of the page, and then on the right side of the page, or on the right side of the page we have the text, and the left side of the page we have the annotations, depending on what side of the page you're on. But in the annotation side, there is vocabulary help. So we're looking at words that are unfamiliar to us, contractions that happen quite a lot in Shakespeare as he's trying to make a sentence fit a certain meter, like tis instead of it is. We have words that we don't use, canopied, roofed in, very simply, and till 7 years heat. 7 years have passed. Lots of words that we just give a little help in. So half of the time, Shakespeare is language, you just need a little help, right? And he's very visual, so sometimes it's not hard to make the leap once you've figured out what a couple of words mean, what the whole thing means in context. So there's that. Secondly, there is story help. What actually is happening in this scene, right? So Twelfth Night is the one that we're looking at here. So, here we have Valentine returns from trying to deliver a love poem from Orsino to Olivia. He tells Orsino that Olivia will mourn her dead brother and hide her face for 7 years. Okay, there we go. We know what's happening. Now we can look at the Shakespeare text and say it with knowledge. And once you say something with knowledge, that means you can imbibe it. You can infuse it. You can infuse it with emotion. You can infuse it with character, right? The element itself, till 7 years heat shall not behold her face, ample view, right? So that's what we want. We want to give story help. We want to give vocabulary help. But we also want students to do a little work on their own, right? We want to give a little help. We want to give an open door. And then it's important for students to walk through the door on their own. Yes, I'm walk through the door. What do you want? It's 7 o'clock. It's been a long day. Have I told you that I've been singing Joseph in my head all day? I've been singing Joseph in my head all day. Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, if you're just tuning in right now. Lindsay Price, resident playwright for Theater Folk. Thanks for having my face in your feed. Don't like it? Just scroll down. It's okay. I won't know. And if you're just checking in, tell me what musical has been singing in your head all day. And we're talking about annotations. So we have the vocabulary help and we have the story help. And then we also have some character questions, right? So, Viola gives the captain money for suggesting her brother might be still alive. Does she believe his story? That's a question that is going to impact how Viola says her line. For saying so, there's gold. Knowest thou this country? Is she skeptical? For saying so, there's gold. Oh, I really believe you. Oh, for saying so, there's gold. Knowest thou this country? Right? You can influence how you say a line. What is it like for Olivia in mourning to know that everyone is talking about Orsino's pursuit of her? Right? So she is Olivia, is she annoyed? Is she so in mourning that she doesn't care? These are character questions that a student can use to make their character more interesting, more fun to play, particularly if you're struggling with the language. If you're struggling with the language, you need to find a way in. Yeah, so that's what here, and I wanted to show you before I let you go. So this is what we're looking at, right? Hey, there we go. So on this particular page, we have on the right side of the page what the text is. And then we've got bolds for vocabulary. We have some underlines. And over here we go. We have got vocabulary meaning. Abjured. There's a word we never use. And some longer sentences. Such disguise as happily shall become the form of my intent. Right? The disguise that will help me get what I want. Amazing. That is a sentence you really need to know how to say. Some description of what's happening. Yeah, there we go. And some talk about character. So Toby and Mariah have a complicated relationship. Right? What does that mean? That is something that if you can put that into the mind of a student, that's something that they can play. Plague, curse, to your ill hours, to your late nights. So important that students know exactly what they're saying. And here's a really interesting character question, right? So we have Sir Andrew Aguecheek, right? An ague is a sickness with fever and chills. A hint at Aguecheek's less than robust character. That is a clue for how to play the character. So all of this is there, right? It's all in Shakespeare's text. It's always in Shakespeare's text. It's sometimes hard to figure out though. So that's where our Shakespeare in an Hour series really comes into play. We want to make it performable. So we're given hints and clues. We're given character questions, we're given story information, and we're given vocabulary. So I think that so that's where I would answer this question, is that how do you make Shakespeare accessible? One, I think you need to find ways to make it performable. You need to get students up on their feet, even if they're only doing a little bit at a time. That is going to get them to understand and just get it into their system onto how to read Shakespeare and how to perform Shakespeare. I think you got to get into the character, and that character is going to help them figure out what it is they're trying to say. And once you figure out what a character is like, Andrew Aguecheek, who's a little less than robust character, once you start playing in character, then your lines make sense. It's the same thing. You want character development in your modern works. You want character development in your Shakespeare. That, I find, is something that gets waylaid quite a bit, as people are just so anxious about figuring out the specifics of the line. It's easy to have characters who are only saying the words and not thinking about the characterization behind the words. And making it performable means you're going to get into physicality. That is so important in Shakespeare, especially in the Shakespeare comedies. It is all physical. Shakespeare was thinking about so many of his comedy characters are physical, and regardless of the language that they speak, regardless of the Shakespearean-ness of it, it's important to approach them from a physical nature. And lastly, teaching the language first. They have to understand what they're saying. They need to know what the words mean so that they can say them with confidence and with that character. Okay, so this was I'm very happy that I am here and was able to do a Facebook Live. I'm embarking on I've been doing a lot of adjudication on the weekends these past few weeks and into the future. So Fridays they're just not going to do it for a while. But as long as I can figure out a day to come and sit down and talk to you and just sort of share some of our stuff that we think that is interesting and important for you guys. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to end by saying Love Theater Day. It is #Love Theater Day. And if you want to make today special, You know, share theater with maybe somebody who is not a theater person, who's not the theater person in your life, who you could share a scene with. Share some Hamilton. Share a Shakespeare play. I know that's a little bit scary. That's jumping a little bit too into the deep end, but you never know. You never know what people are going to connect to unless you give it a shot. We're all human, and that's what theater's all about, isn't it? All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, have a great night.